What is going on, SHIPIT Nation YouTube station? We are back Saturday afternoon talking over a 7-game DraftKings slate. Happy to be back on Saturday. Shout out to my boy Ham taking care of things last Saturday as I had some obligations outside of the daily fantasy world, some real life stuff. But hey, we are back, excited. A couple days off, like I said, we've been kind of out of the mix, but it feels real good to dive back in and hopefully, talk through some winners here on a very interesting slate that we're kind of waiting on some news for, a lot of different avenues that we can go. But let's dive into it. First and foremost, if you are not a member here, really consider, joining the nation and understanding, how different it is than everything else in the industry. Obviously, we signed with Sabre. Today, we're going to be showing off the Stone. We showed the Sabre, and the Stone kind of split depending on what day of the week and what show we are doing. Today, we're going old school with the Stone, where I kind of start my lineups before I dive over to Sabre and start breaking it down from there. As far as today's slate goes, like I said, there's plenty of avenues of value that we're going to get into that are really going to be they're the decision points of the slate. Depending on how well you get your value, it's going to lead you to how you're going to build your lineups. And if you could drill kind of the value that we have now that we're at this point of the NBA season, it's going to be the difference between winning and losing, not only the money line, but first and fifth, first and 10th. So very important. First and foremost, 7 games. I broke them down into 3 buckets. The A bucket and the games that I'm going to look to get the most exposure to, pretty much the obvious side of it. It's the Pacers and Hawks with the 246.5 total, and the Pistons and Warriors with the 238 total. After those 2 as my A buckets, we're going to fall into 4 games that are really tough to distinguish between. Number 1 is Pelicans and Rockets, 229. Then we're going to fall into a mix of all the games that are kind of hard to distinguish with. Lakers and Celtics, 7.5 point spread, high 220s. Wizards and Raptors, closer game with all of the value that we have. 3.5, just a possession or 2 as the Vegas spread, 224. And then the Bulls and Heat at 224.5. Interesting there. Most bowl games we're going to see in the 30s, most likely sometimes the 40s. Today we're seeing that 224. So interesting as we kind of break that down. The last game I would put in the C bucket, obviously it involves the Magic as it normally does, and the Bucks with a 215 total. Another interesting one. Normally we see those Magic games kind of in, about 10 to 8 points lower in total. Today we're seeing in the 215, which could be encouraging to Magic players. I don't think so, but people will think that way. We're going to start from the top. We're going to keep this a little bit of a shorter breakdown, as we do every Saturday. I'm going to try to not make it as long, but we're going to finish this video, jump over to the slate plan, have all of the deep diving breakdowns into there as a slate overview. But we're going to quickly go through the games here. First and foremost here, Pelicans at Rockets. As I said, 229 total. Rockets are favored by 8. Fred VanVleet is out for the Rockets, and same old stuff for the Pelicans. Not one of my favorite games. Obviously, this is going to be a B bucket game, but I think it's just hard. It could be a really good game if you're able to kind of get the mid-tier correct as far as specifically the Rockets go, but as well as the Pelicans, but a little bit tougher matchup for the Pelicans. These guys are priced fairly when you start to look at Trey Murphy under 8K, CJ McCollum just over 7K. Zion, been really producing, getting a few extra minutes at 9,200 is interesting. But the thing that kind of, puts the light bulb off in my head is why it's going to be a B game is just there's no ownership coming to the Pelican side. Yes, we have ownership coming to the Rockets, but I think people are going to build lineups and focus on getting 1 or 2 of these Rockets and not have many run backs from the Pelican side. I'm going to highlight, obviously, Zion at 92. We have enough value that you're able to get kind of double studs. We'll consider him a stud tonight. He just produces so well in his minutes. Yes, a tougher matchup, but you can't talk about the Pelicans without bringing his name up. And then I'm really just going to focus on, CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy. Obviously, I like Murphy a lot more than CJ McCollum. So does DraftKings with an $800 difference. But those will be kind of either one of those 3 I'll be looking to build game stacks or mini stacks with a couple of these Rockets on the other side. As for the Rockets side, it's more of a mid-tier thing for me. Şengün at 95 and Amen at 87. These guys are priced fairly. I think Şengün's a little too expensive, but they're priced fairly, which makes it, tougher when trying to get the game stack as we like, kind of the higher end pieces from the Pelican side. So I'll be looking in game stacks of making multiple lineups to get your Tari Easons, your Dylan Brooks, your Jalen Greens. And that's where I'll really look to dial in getting a couple of those guys. When we find matchups like we have for the Rockets against the Pelicans, we want to take advantage of it with these mid-tier guys because their prices necessarily aren't what they should be. Yes, Amen and Şengün, you can make cases for them being able to outproduce their tags, but those are real tags. And when you look to roster these real tags, you're going to find yourself in a spot where the blowout obviously does hurt, as it would hurt mid-tier, but not as much because you're not spending as much. But all three of those guys in the mid-tier, Green, Eason, and Brooks, they all have potential upside at their tags. Specifically, Jalen Green for me, yes, more expensive than the other two, and he'll kind of be the top fringe of the mid-tier. We have enough value to make it okay where you can get multiple guys at this price tag. But in a situation like this where they're able to go up and down with not very strong defense, I could see him being more productive in the shot volume that he does have. So I'll highlight that. Obviously, the field is a green as you look at ownership, but sometimes the field isn't wrong. So it's okay to eat some ownership, especially if you like the situation. Moving on to my favorite game, and I would assume everybody else's favorite game on the slate, the Pacers at the Hawks. This has a giant total in 246.5. We know the pace of this game. So when we talk through the situation here, it's not rocket science. It's very easy to dial in as this is, the best game on the slate to target as far as fantasy production. But we're going to kind of look for what hopes to be at 4:30. Take some stances before we get starting lineups and as the slate locks. As we look, obviously the first game on the slate starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. This starts 30 minutes later. Hopefully we get starting lineups and some of this questionable injury news closer to that lock period, as we should have lineups and projections or whatever kind of game plan you want to take going into this slate before the news breaks. When the news breaks, we're not, scrambling around trying to figure out how we're going to adjust to it. From the injury side, this is what we're going to look to target. Halliburton's questionable. Neesmith is probable, and Mathurin is questionable. From the Hawks side, LeVert, Mann, Krejci are all questionable, and Trae Young is probable. For the Pacers side, it's all going to really depend. I think personally Halliburton will play, and he will start, obviously. But the Mathurin news is going to be big for me. We know we want to target the Hawks. We know they like to run. We know they give up transition points. We know the Pacers want to run, and they're effective in transition. So when looking at this game, I'm going to take it from a stance of Halliburton's going to start and play. Mathurin is going to play and come off the bench. This is going to take off Nembhard and Neesmith for me. Mathurin coming back at sub 5K. I would much rather get to him. Not necessarily sure if he will be limited after missing some time, but I'm willing to kind of take that, bet, if you will, with the sub 5K tag with the matchup that he has against the Hawks. If Mathurin is out, we're going to bump Nembhard and Neesmith, and we're going to find them, yes, as their tags keep rising with the situations they've had. They're all playing big minutes, and they do offer upside in this high-paced, turnover-prone game style. So I really like both of those two if Mathurin's in. If somehow Halliburton is out, obviously we're going to bump TJ McConnell, but I'm going to look to get past the Nembhard, Neesmith, Mathurins at that point and get to Siakam and Turner. Both of these guys are going to lose shots to Halliburton, and their tags just aren't correct for missing the number one, usage assist percentage guy out of the starting lineup. So both these guys will receive bumps in a high-paced, great matchup. So one more time, Halliburton, if he's in, like I expect, and Mathurin is in, don't really love much. I'll get to Halliburton. I'll get to Mathurin. I might get some shares Siakam and Turner. If Mathurin was to miss, we're going to bump Nembhard and Neesmith. I'm okay with Halliburton at that point. But if Halliburton was to miss and Mathurin was to miss, which is probably the best case scenario, I would be looking to get, yes, the 5K guys in Nembhard and Neesmith are good, but now we're looking at TJ McConnell's, Siakam's, and Turner's, if that makes sense. Jumping over to the Hawks side, I just can't get behind a $9,800 Trae, regardless of matchup, regardless of game environment. A little too expensive for me. We've seen a handful of games where he kind of takes off scoring because of matchup. Yes, his assists are huge, And yes, he offers you that double bonus because, it's Trae Young and he could score in the double digits, very easily and in the first quarter after hitting a couple shots. But 9,800 is a real tag. So I don't mind him in game stacks. Specifically, if we're able to get value and Halliburton is out and we're able to get TJ McConnell's, Nembhard's, Neesmith, maybe Mathurin if he's in, and taking a mid-price center or power forward in Siakam and Turner, then I'm okay with the Trae Young stuff. If everybody's in, don't really love it as much. And I'll be looking to get guys like Dyson Daniels, Okongwu, who have been playing great in the mid 6K tier. Well, Dyson's almost 7K, but you kind of get my drift. I think both these guys are in outstanding spots. Obviously, we've seen what Okongwu's been able to do over the past, couple of weeks to a month. So I really like him, especially in this matchup with Turner. Turner kind of extends the floor, more rebounding opportunities for Okongwu. But this entire game is this entire team and how you approach it is going to dictate based off of the news with LeVert, Mann, and Krejci. If they're all in, then Dyson, Okongwu, LeVert off the bench. I like all of those guys in a high-paced matchup. If one or two of these guys was to miss, I'm immediately going to bump the questionable tag that's in. I think he will be able to be in an outstanding spot with the tag, right? Whether it's Mann, LeVert, I'm drawing a blank, sorry. Mann, LeVert, or Krejci. If any of those guys, if two of them are out, I'm going to bump that guy. I'm also going to be bumping Niang, 4,200. I think he's in an outstanding spot. If one, two, or even all three of these guys were to miss, another guy that's going to benefit greatly is Ricochet at 4,500. Kind of been waiting since the trade deadline to see those minutes increase. We've seen it a few times, not a bunch of times, but in the situation that he is able to do that, 4,500 is just not enough at this tag. Like I said, great game to target, number one target game on the slate, but I believe that we necessarily won't get all of the news with time to really digest it and take educated approaches to the game. So I think this is a game you should spend time on over the 3 or 4 hours leading up to the slate and thinking out the different situations, and when those situations hit, how you are going to target it. And so now you have a couple of hours to think about this game rather than take the last 30 minutes to lock or after lock and the 30 minutes leading up to the game to kind of distinguish what you want to do. But very important game on the slate. Moving on to another very important piece of the slate, the Toronto Raptors value. Wizards at Raptors, 224 total, 3.5 point, or now it's up to 4 point spread. Wizards have Holmes and Poole questionable. Obviously, Brogdon is out. And for the Raptors side, Quickly's already announced out. Grady Dick is out. Jacoby Walter's out. And then we have questionable tags on Scotty Barnes, Boucher, Abaji, and Mogbo. We're going to find ourselves in a situation with the Raptors that we have 4 guys that are all projected to get mid 20 minutes up to 30 minutes, all below 3,500. Shed at 35, AJ Lawson at 3K, Orlando Robinson at 34, Roden at 3K. These are gonna dictate the slate. If we're able to hit on a couple of these guys at 3K, it offers so many possibilities to your lineup. And if we do get this news ahead of time, this is going to be one of those 400, 415 point slates needed to win. Starting with the Wizard side, don't really have much that I like. We'll approach it from both Poole and Holmes are in. If that is the case, I can get behind some Jordan Poole at 7,200. Don't love it, but I don't mind it. Same goes for Coulibaly, 6K. Yes, a real tag, but I'm okay with it. Really, my big target here is Sarr at 5,400. As the season progresses, he's starting to kind of grow in, not to his body. That sounds like something you would say in college, but kind of grow into his role in the NBA. 5,400 is too cheap, especially as able to knock down a couple of threes. This is going to be a matchup we've targeted all year long with centers against the Raptors. So this is a great spot for him, and he'll be my number one play on the team. If Jordan Poole is out, we're obviously going to bump Middleton. We're obviously going to bump Bub Carrington. Coulibaly's going to get a bump. And as gross as it is, Marcus Smart at 3,900, I can even get behind that. Not one of my favorite plays, but somebody you can look at if looking to get different and you think that the Raptors value doesn't come through. Jumping over to the Raptors side, RJ Barrett is back in the lineup. Pirtle's back into the lineup. He's still on his weird minutes limit. His price has come down, so he isn't the worst, value, if you will. Not in play like when looking at the top plays on the slate, but in play at 5,600. He's shown that in mid 20 minutes he can produce, especially at 5,600. But obviously the real one's going to be Scotty Barnes at 7,700. I think there will be plenty of builds tonight that are going to take a Scotty Barnes and an RJ Barrett together, along with one of these 3K guys for the Raptors, and look to build lineups multi-studded, get a game stack. But, we're looking at 14-8 for Scotty and RJ Barrett. You could do the math and easily say, hey, both of these guys, as we saw last night with Quickly and Scotty Barnes, these guys do have the potential to produce 110, 115 fantasy points combined. And at 14-8, it's just a little too cheap for me. As we see the ownership, this is going to be the spot to go. I'm going to rank the values, Shed at 3,500, AJ Lawson at 3K, and then I'll get down to Robinson at 3,400. I will be looking to pair these with at least one of Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. But another interesting spot, as we most likely won't have the starting lineup with tons of time to spare. This is another situation where you are going to look to say, hey, what are the approaches that I'm going to take on this slate as a whole 2 or 3 hours before lock, and saying, okay, if this, then I do this. If that, this is what I do. And I think it's a great approach. If Scotty Barnes was to miss for whatever reason, RJ Barrett would be the highest owned player on the slate, and with good reason. Great spot, very low tag for his role and what he's going to be able to do. But these last 2 games I talked about are going to be very important to you, distinguishing what you want to do hours before the slate. Bulls and Heat. Interesting spot here, as we've seen so many Bulls games be in the high 230s, the low 240s. Now we see it at 224.5. The Heat are favored by 4.5. Vooch is doubtful. Ball's doubtful. Patrick Williams is doubtful. Looks like THT and White are both probable. They're going to play. Obviously, Io's out. From the Heat perspective, Wiggins is questionable and Burks is questionable. Both Ware and Hero are probable. And obviously, Drew Smith and Jovic are out. This is an interesting game for me because we're going to look at totals. We're going to see the other situations, and people, aside from the Tyler Hero love, are going to look to kind of get their eggs in different baskets on this slate. From the Bulls side, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Getting 8,400, absolutely smashing, getting the minutes, showing triple-double upside. He has the upside at 8,400. Obviously like him. Also like Kobe White at 7,200, with Ball, Vooch, all these guys most likely missing. So those guys are interesting. I'm going to label Trey Jones and Kevin Waiter at 4,200 and 4,600 as really good values on the slate. Are they as good as the Toronto side? Not necessarily, but they are definitely in play on this slate for kind of those upper value plays. Yes, we're seeing some ownership come into Trey Jones, not as much on Waiter at 4,200, but these guys will be in play. I think the Jalen Smith, Zach Collins conversation can be slowed down. I think the price and the minutes have evened out nicely for each other. I don't think that this is a spot that we're able to gain too much on the field by going to one of these guys. Yes, we've seen the upside from Zach Collins at 6,400. I just don't think it's a spot for it. Really, then on the other side of the game, if you do get multiple pieces of these Bulls and you want to get one of Giddey and White with one of Jones and Waiter off of the bench, we're going to want a Heat piece. Tyler Hero is going to come in. We have him at 21% ownership. I think that the way that we're going to build lineups tonight with all of the value that we have, and then you taking the stud of your liking, we're going to fall into this range as we get down to building lineups. And I think because of that, Tyler Hero is going to be a little bit more popular than 21%. We have Burks labeled into the starting lineup. We have Wiggins in as well. Those guys are both questionable today. I don't have Valina. I would anticipate him to play. But the real decision point is going to be Hero or Bam. Bam's been playing outstanding. Yes, his tag is 8,300. Yes, more people are obviously going to go to Hero at the discount at 8,700. Because of the ownership, I will lean Bam in a situation where the Bulls are going to get up and down. It's going to offer him more rebounding, maybe a few extra stocks. And that also means, as we've seen over the last couple of months, his assists go up. So I really like Bam, not only because of the spot, but ownership wise. So I think, if you're stacking multiple Bulls, you're going to want to get one of these pieces. You could make a case for Andrew Wiggins at 6,800. I don't love it, but I'm okay with it. Falling down to Ware at 5,800, I think as his price continues to fall, this is going to be a guy that we're going to be able to get an opportunity on. Tonight, not so much. He is probable tonight with Hero, but 5,800 if he's coming off the bench, which I'm not necessarily sure. I'm kind of curious to see how they approach this specific game. But if that is the case, I'm going to take the wait and see approach. But, in DFS, we find ourselves becoming way more profitable when we're the first guy to the punch situations like this. So I don't hate it because we know how productive he could be. Magic and Bucks. This is my least favorite game on the slate, and rightfully so. I mean, we have almost it's 31-point difference as far as the highest total game on the slate, and this one, pretty easy breakdown. So as far as injuries goes, it could be a little interesting, especially that this game locks an hour after lock. Obviously, Suggs is out from the Magic side. For the Bucks, we have Giannis, questionable, Dame probable, Gary Trent doubtful, and Pat Connaughton out. If Giannis was to somehow miss this game, we're going to propel, obviously, Dame, Kyle Kuzma, as ugly as that is, but specifically Kevin Porter Jr. at 3,900. But we'll start here with the Magic side. The Magic side don't have much. We saw the increase to Paulo at 9,200, and we've seen Franz kind of stay right there in the mid-K range or mid-8K range, which I think his price is fair. If you're making a decision between either one of these guys, most likely you would find yourself in this situation if Giannis was to miss, or if you are rostering Giannis. With the value that we have, we're going to want to get pieces from the other side to make sure that the guys that we do roster from the Bucks are able to hit their ceiling outcomes. That comes with a nice paced game, more than the total at 215. Maybe we find ourselves in a situation where it's 110, 112 type game. If that's the case, you're going to want probably one of these guys with Franz and Paulo. I think the third guy you could throw in be Cole Anthony with his almost 25% usage at sub 5K. But I don't love it. This is going to be more of a situation where I'm going to get one of these pieces specifically for me if Giannis is out, and Dame at 9,100 is going to be propelled into essentially a lock for me at 91. We've seen him be able to, play really productive with Giannis on the floor and exceed this tag a handful of times. But taking Giannis off the floor is such a key factor to how much upside these guys have. So I'll kind of leave it at that. If you have a Bucks guy, then it would propel me to the Magic side. I'm going to go Franz for the discount at similar ownership. Obviously, Paul is going to be a good play as well. So I'll kind of put those together. But, as a tiebreaker, take it down to the $600 discount on DraftKings. And then I'll throw Cole Anthony in as kind of like a fringe primary play in game stacks, obviously, in a more of a secondary play at sub 5K. But I think at sub 5K, if he's able to be productive, he could play well and into the mid 30s, even flirt with 40 DraftKings points. From the Bucks side, it's all going to depend on that Giannis news. If Giannis is in, really the only play for me is Kevin Porter Jr., who I believe it was a triple-double last time out at 3,900. I think he's really asserted himself as to being that not only first guy off the bench, but being the most productive player on the bench. And the only scoring really with the second unit. So 3,900, I believe this is a great avenue to get off some of the Toronto Raptors stuff. Even more of the case if Giannis was to miss. But if everybody's in, Giannis is okay. I'm obviously slower place matchup, but it's a very nice, Vegas spread. If that's the case, I'll get to some Giannis. I'll get to some Dame, primarily Kevin Porter Jr. If Giannis is out, bump Lillard, bump Kuzma, bump Brook, but specifically bump Kevin Porter Jr., and he will be one of my favorite plays. 2 games left here. My goal was to keep it under 30 minutes. Let's see how we're doing. We're going to be tight. It's going to be close. Lakers and Celtics, classic matchup, classic NBA matchup. Not much fantasy relevance for me, but same thing. I mean, we could see ourselves with some of these guys missing and propel to some really good plays. First of all, from the Lakers side, LeBron and Luka are both probable. Hayes has been downgraded to doubtful, and Rui is out. This is going to shake some stuff up. Personally, I think it's going to be DFS that's going to, benefit the most, and specifically Vanderbilt at 4,100. I think both of those guys will find themselves in a position for increased minutes at very fair tags. I like all of the other value on the slate more. This is more of a game stacking situation where if you wanted to get a handful of sets with these guys, I think you take some shots on DFS. Vanderbilt, I think, the ownership will change, obviously, as we get this news and we're able to react to this news. But I think both those guys are in play. Obviously, can always go Luka. Obviously, can always go LeBron. Reeves is interesting. I don't think his price is down enough but we're going to see that price to continue to come down, and I'm going to be looking to target him moving forward around the mid 6Ks. Hopefully he gets down that low, and hopefully we're one of the first to the punch. But as of right now, that's going to be a no-go. For the Celtics side, Porzingis, Holiday, and Hauser are all questionable. I don't have a lean if they're in or out. I mean, I would assume these guys are in with, it being Saturday night. I don't know. I haven't looked at the TV schedule. I would assume that this game is going to be nationally televised. And not necessarily super important to standings. I mean, it's going to be important for the Lakers, not for the Celtics, but I would anticipate these guys to play on a Saturday night with LeBron and Luka coming to town. If that's the case, I don't really have a lean. I mean, you could make a case for the I know Ball and I know Jason Tatum, even though his price is elevated to 10-2, that he's going to look to score more in this matchup and kind of, beat up on the Lakers. So if everybody is in, I would probably lean to him first, with Jaylen Brown not far behind as we see his tag around the 8K line. We're going to look to target. It's more of these times where everybody's in and he's kind of in the higher 8Ks, and I'm going to look to step away. But if Porzingis was to miss, or Hauser was to miss, or Holiday was to miss, we're going to have some plays here. First and foremost, it's going to be Al Horford for me. Luke Kornet's price is a little too much at 4,600, and yes, Al Horford at 5K isn't cheap. But I think specifically in this matchup, I think he might get a few extra minutes. This is with Porzingis missing. Obviously, he'll get extra minutes with the Porzingis news, but additionally versus the Lakers, I think he might get a few extra minutes. This is also going to bump Derek White at 6,900. This is also going to bump Peyton Pritchard at 5,900. I think both of these guys will be popular in different avenues to be able to approach the game if these guys are labeled out. Lastly, if they're all labeled out, obviously we're going to get to Jason Tatum, and obviously we're going to get to Jaylen Brown. But we're going to find ourselves in a situation like that. I'm going to go Tatum over Brown, but I can't be mad at the Brown stuff at 8,300. But we're going to find ourselves, getting the news maybe after lock. So if you do like this game, leave some spots open to be able to move around your lineup. But if Holiday and Hauser were to miss, bump all the Peyton Pritchard at sub 6K, maybe playing high 20, 30 minutes. Last game of the night, and the only other game that I have in the A bracket. But it's tough because we look at it and we see essentially no injury news. Pods is questionable from the Warriors side, and Tobias Harris is probable. This is more of just trusting the Vegas total. The spread went from 6.5 down to 6. Not enough movement to be able to raise eyebrows, but almost 240 total. I think that some of these guys are mispriced. I think Cade at 10-1 is very fair. I just like getting a Cade when there's no ownership. He's been playing outstanding, really turned around this Pistons team. He prints high floor games with upside. Really like Cade here. As a whole on a slate, might be a little tougher when you look at the different studs that we have, but depending on how you build your lineups, we have enough value to get multiple of these guys, and there's nothing like playing a 10-1 Cade that has, the floor and the ceiling combo to get you somewhere between 50 and 65 points. I really like that, especially if you decide that you want to get a Warrior on the other side. But really from the Pistons side, it's going to be Thompson at 5,900. That's off his minutes limits for the rest of the season. It's going to be Cade. You can make a case for Duren at 6,900. Don't necessarily love it, but you can make a case. You can even make a case for Tobias Harris at 5,800. And again, this doesn't profile as the most outstanding spot, but I'm going to trust Vegas totals here and look at this as almost 240 points and say there's going to be points scored in this game. And we're not seeing tons of ownership, so we want to take advantage of that. Jumping over to the Warriors side, I think Steph is just a little too mispriced. His price should be up a little higher, 9,300. Again, Steph at a fair tag with low ownership, I'm going to want to target, especially if Pods is out. We've seen Pods take a ton of shots and really work himself into this lineup great. If he's out, I'm going to bump Curry even more. If Pods is in, I don't mind him, 5,800. He's taking shots. He's getting run. He's kind of in the good graces of Kerr now. So I like him. Jimmy Butler, 7,800, price is fair, but the real play here for me is going to be Draymond Green at sub 6K. I like targeting Draymond when all of these guys are on the floor. I think obviously his assist goes up. Not only that, but his toughness and energy of the game goes up. So I'm going to get to some Draymond Green at 5,900, and I think that might be one of my favorite kind of mini game stacks, as you will, is getting to Cade on one side and getting to Draymond on the other side. Yes, the center eligibility is tough. But not a great amount of center plays that we're looking to get into lineup. So I don't mind that at 5,900. Yes, the ownership is there, but damn, I think this is going to be a good spot to target. a fair price Draymond Green. Guys, that's all 7 games. One more time to break it through. We got Pacers and Hawks, Pistons and Warriors as kind of my A games. We're going to see a lot of ownership, but like lineup builds that involve all of these Toronto Raptors with the value that we have. So if if the slate's an hour away and we don't have the news, hopefully you guys have thought through what your avenues are going to be when the news breaks. Don't be last to the punch. Don't wait for the news and react. Have your different sets built, your lineups built to where what's going to happen if this guy's out and this guy's in. If Scotty Barnes is out, what do I do? If Scotty Barnes is in, what do I do? If Poole is out in that game and you're going to want to get the pieces from the Wizards side, what are you going to do? That would be how I'd approach a slate. Pick your games, understand what's going to happen, and react to it. And that will help you build and feel more confident about your lineups. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm jumping over to knock out the slate plan. If you aren't a member yet of SHIPIT Nation, truly consider it. I mean, we are the cheapest in the industry with great information. We're signed with Sabre, and really the icing on the cake that other people, if you have not been a part of the Discord yet, is the Discord is such an advantage. So many strategy talks, just a great environment to be in to help get better at DFS, to cheer people on, whatever it may be. But if you are not a member, I think you are missing out. Guys, good luck in your contest tonight, and let's ship it.